And there it is. Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the regular board meeting of the Cameron Park Community Services District. It is Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. We are beginning at 6:35. If you're not familiar, our agenda is posted on the website along with teleconference meeting protocols as we move through this for not too much longer, hopefully. Look forward to being in person again soon. And for now, we will do this. General Manager, would you begin with roll call?
Yes, I will. Did you want to open the special meeting now or wait till later in the agenda?
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, we'll open the special meeting now. As concurrent with this, we will begin that alongside the special meeting scheduled in the regular agenda. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. All right. Roll call,
Roll
please.
call. Okay. Director Easton?
Here.
Director Carlson?
Here.
Director Bazette?
Here.
Director Scobie?
Here.
Director Wooten?
Here.
Good to have you all here tonight. Director Bazette, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Bazette. Appreciate that. All right, the reminder as we move through this, public testimony will be received on each agenda item as it is called. Principal parties on each side of an issue are allocated 10 minutes to speak. Individual comments are limited to 3 minutes, except with the consent of the board. Individuals shall be allowed to speak on an item only once. Members of the audience are asked to volunteer their name before addressing the board. The board reserves the right to waive said rules by a majority vote. We will begin with the adoption of the agenda. So I'll put this out to the board. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections that you'd like to make, or do we have a motion?
I move we adopt the agenda.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. General Manager, roll call, please.
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Aye.
Director Bazette?
Aye.
Director Scobie?
Aye.
Director Wooten?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Now we'll move into our first section. We have recognitions and presentations. We've got a couple of presentations tonight that I'm really looking forward to hearing. So I want to, first of all, thank our guests that have come, as well as anybody in the public that's here for those presentations. Our aim with this will be to be done with presentations, hopefully around 7:30ish, if not before. We have a few other items to do as well as closed session tonight. But we want to make sure we allow sufficient time because both EID and Chief Gaines are bringing some important information we need to hear tonight. So we'll start with our El Dorado Irrigation District representatives. Jill, could you introduce us, please?
I will. And before I introduce Dan, I want to ask, do you want to approve the special meeting agenda now? Take a little sidestep, or you want to do that later on?
Let's go ahead and move into the recognitions and presentations.
Okay.
We can go ahead and do that after so that our guests
Okay.
step up. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, I just didn't want it for us to forget it. So we'll keep it on the end of the agenda. So,
Thank you.
okay. I would like to introduce Dan Cochran. He is the operations manager for the El Dorado Irrigation District. He has been, we chatted before the meeting, been with the district for 17 years. So I am sure he is a wealth of information. And I was talking to Dan and he reminded me that actually El Dorado Irrigation District was planning a presentation just right when COVID hit. And so it's been a while since we've had them, and I previewed the PowerPoint. There's a lot of great information in there. So anyway, so welcome, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, President Easton, members of the board, members of the public, our community. Thank you for having me here this evening. I really appreciate the invitation, or I guess acceptance of our self-invitation to present to you this evening. I was going to quickly give you just an overview of the district's water supplies and then talk about our current drought situation. I think everybody is obviously well aware of the current hydrology within California, and
Yes.
I think this one's a little different than the last one. I think this one really kind of snuck up on a lot of us, where focused on COVID, focused on family health, and now we're also focused on our water supply. In addition to obviously this time of year, we're all well aware of fire hazards. I'm sure Chief Gaines will be talking to you next. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure for both our board and any members of the public present, there will be time to ask some questions at the end of your presentation. I'm assuming that's the appropriate time to do that.
That would be great. And then if any board members have any questions during the presentation, I'm also happy to answer them at that time.
Okay, and then that's a great place for me, just as a friendly reminder to our board and panelists, is that if you are not speaking at this time, please mute yourself. There are the occasional background noises, and in the middle of presentations, especially from our guests, I want to make sure that they get an undistracted opportunity to present. So thank you all for that. Dan, I'll hand that back to you.
Great, thank you. Slide 2, please. Slide 2, please. There we go. So we're sitting here, or I'm actually technically in my office in Placerville, but most of you are sitting in Cameron Park right now. And we look down at Folsom Lake, and that is one of our water supply portfolios, but it's actually only about a third of the water supply that we deliver to our customers comes from Folsom Reservoir. The other two being the South Fork American River Watershed in Kybers and Jacobson Lake, our famous Slide Park recreation area, which hopefully everybody's had a chance to visit. So you can see our service area goes from about the county line up to our Pollock Pines area. Slide 3, please. So we'll first talk about Jacobson Lake, Slide Park. This treatment plant, at some point during the year, the water that comes to your tap comes from this treatment plant. This is the district's largest treatment plant and the only treatment plant that never goes offline. It is always in operation. Interestingly, it was actually originally constructed by the federal government, by the Bureau of Reclamation, that same agency that runs Folsom Reservoir and the rest of the Central Valley Project. And through legislation, yes, it literally took an act of Congress, we were able to actually acquire that project for the district's sole control. And so we're able to manage it for the benefit of our customers and our local hydrology and our needs, and don't necessarily need to operate in conjunction with the many other reservoirs throughout the state. With that, it's about 33,000 acre feet of water. So we used to say about a half acre foot of water per house. It's a little bit less now. So, 60,000 homes. So it's a pretty significant water supply, very significant for us and pretty significant at overall California scale. Owning this reservoir actually allowed the district to move our water rights from our two eastern supplies between our two reservoirs and storage facilities by virtue of a tunnel. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. Slide 4, please. Our next in my favorite area of the watershed, and I've been up there since I was a kid, is our Project 1A4, the South Fork American River Watershed. If you happen to be able to drive up to Lake Tahoe, you're passing our facilities. We have a 22-mile long canal that parallels Highway 50 from about Pollock Pines up to the town of Kybers. We have water stored in our up on the Highway 50 corridor up at Lake Aloha, which is actually the lake that creates Horsetail Falls when you drive into Lake Tahoe, and then Echo Lakes up there at the summit. And then on the Highway 88 corridor, if you're a skier or like to hike over in the Kirkwood area, we operate Caples and Silver Lakes. Those water rights provide some of the oldest water rights in the state of California. Many date back to the 1850s. In a year like this, it's very important because water rights seniority affects when your water rights are cut or limited. So it's a very important fact for this type of year that we're in. In addition to that supply, we actually have further rights from this watershed that we currently divert down at Folsom Reservoir with a later priority date, 1920s, but still in perspective, that's actually a pretty favorable water right history. And we're currently working on trying to relocate some of these points of diversion to farther upstream in our system so we can feed them via gravity as much as possible to our customers rather than pump that water back uphill. Your energy bill at home, just like us, is one of our biggest bills. And to the extent that we can have Mother Nature work with us then rather than against us, so we like to move that water downhill. It also gives us the ability to store the water in Jacobson Lake, which we currently don't have for this particular water right. Slide 5, please. And the last location, as I mentioned at the beginning, is Folsom Reservoir. And the district and its predecessor agencies have actually had contracts to Folsom Reservoir for 6 decades now. But we are continuing to grow as that portion of the county in El Dorado Hills, Cameron Park continues to grow. These are our 3 different types of contracts that we hold, both for local water rights, some mining area ditches we've relocated down to Folsom Reservoir, some older reservoirs, upstream supplies, and then we do buy, through a contract entitlement, we do buy water from the Bureau of Reclamation as well. One point, interesting fact, we're the only water purveyor in the greater Sacramento region that does not divert its water from Folsom Lake Dam, where the main outlet is. We actually have an intake near the Browns Ravine area. If you've had the opportunity to be on the lake, you may have or may not have seen our facility, which is on the next slide, please. We have a rather modest intake facility at the South Fork American River Arm, but it's an important facility. That facility needs to be in operation to meet the El Dorado Hills community and potentially one day the Cameron Park community, depending upon the supplies and our infrastructure at that time. The largest portion of that facility, as you can see on the bottom right there, is actually the generator. It's actually the size, it is a semi-truck trailer and it's about 2 megawatts. So it's a very large generator, but you can imagine we're pumping water back uphill to kind of the Francisco area, the Safeway, Green Valley Road area where our treatment plant is, just even before we treat it and pump it further uphill. Next slide, please. One of the big projects we're doing right now, and sometimes it's hard to gain appreciation, but you may be able to see a tiny person on these large barges, is we're upgrading that intake facility. It's a pretty monumental, it's one of the biggest capital projects that we've participated in, probably at least among the top 3 in the 17 years I've been with the district. But we removed facilities that were actually part of the original 1961 facility and are upgrading for the next 50 to hopefully 100 years to meet our customer needs going forward. Pretty precarious conditions, as you can imagine, working on that slope. Slide 8, please. So now we're getting into a little bit of current year hydrology. I just wanted to give you a quick background on our water supplies. This is beautiful Lake Aloha in Desolation Wilderness. If you ever get a chance to hike up there, it's almost that full this year, but not quite that full. So next slide, please. So I think this is probably not a surprise to anybody, but I like to show the slide for perspective. And the light blue polygon is would be the 50-year average of hydrology, rainfall basically in Northern California. We call it our 8-station index. It's an aggregate of a bunch of data, but basically it's saying, on average, Northern California, your mountains, you get about 51 inches. As you can see, the royal blue line in the bottom, we were less than half of the precip which we would typically get, and second only to the 76, 77 drought. So, while we're all busy working on having our families be healthy new with COVID, the Mother Nature just turned off. As you can see, that second week of March, that flat line means there was 0 additional precipitation since March. Very, very, very dry spring. And our water consumption did reflect that. So, and there's some other comparative years. You can see we had some very recent, very wet years and some very recent, very dry years. So next slide, please. This is similar data, but this is looking at snowpack. And so this is a cross section of California, many, many sites, but that light blue polygon is again your average snowpack for the season. So those are like winter sports. As you can see, until about March, we were actually doing okay. We were about 70% of normal as of March 1. And that was, everybody remembers that storm we had in February. I had 5 inches of rain in my house in 1 week. And we were actually doing okay. Fortunately, that big storm that came in was a cold storm. But then after that, it never snowed again for the most part. And that snow melted very rapidly. As you could see, we were unfortunately moving in, drier than last year, and even fortunately a little better than 76, 77, but very, very warm, accelerated spring. And the next slide, please, is just an illustration of that. So you remember on the last slide, we had a nice even bell curve that you like to see for snow melt. But here's Silver Lake this year. As you can see, we slowly built up that snowpack, but it all melted in 30 days. So you just how quickly that snowpack melted this year, just amazing. And it caught everybody off guard, including Bureau of Reclamation that operates their Folsom Reservoir. As they work with the State Department of Water Resources, they were continually taking this data from all these snow sensors all across the Sierra and waiting for that snow runoff to happen. And it just literally never happened. They missed their forecast by 70,000 acre feet in May alone. So, and as far as inflow to Folsom Reservoir. So very extreme, very different hydrology that any of the forecasters had ever anticipated. Slide 12, please. So how do we respond? As you know, this is the second consecutive dry year, and really the driest, the third driest in 105 years, and the driest in 77. So we worked very aggressively early in the spring. We saw things starting to happen in February. We were moving water February, March, April very quickly, as much as we could, from our Project 184 into Jacobson Lake, and we moved about 8,000 acre feet into that reservoir. So that's about enough water for 16,000 homes. That having that tunnel was a huge benefit. We really managed Jacobson Lake as our main carryover. It's our workhorse. It's the only reservoir that's a 2-year reservoir. So, and you'll see a slide to kind of illustrate that in a minute, but that's really where we have the most supply available to work off accumulated storage to meet our customer needs. When we don't need to do that, we'll generate additional hydroelectric power to offset our water rates. But this year, really focusing on meeting the consumptive needs of our customers. Slide 13, please. So this is a picture of Hazel Creek Tunnel. It's about a mile upstream. You can hike to it from our campgrounds at Hazel Creek Campground at the back of Sly Park Recreation Area. It's one of the 2 tunnels that enter the lake. This was the most water we'd ever moved through the tunnel, but just shows, you know, what we need to do to help meet our growing customer base needs. Slide 14, please. This is just a quick snapshot. I talked about the 3 different locations where we divert our water. We have our average year supply and how we anticipate meeting that this year. And as you can see, you know, Folsom Reservoir, everybody's well aware, unfortunately, of the current conditions of Folsom Reservoir. We're not relying on that nearly as much as we could this year. Simply because there's not a lot of water there. We're trying to do our part to help meet, and we're working on stored water in our upstream reservoirs and moving that water strategically through our system down all the way into the El Dorado Hills area. At portions of the year, we turn off our treatment plant at Project 184 to do annual maintenance of those flumes along that 22-mile long canal. And we'll turn off water at Folsom Reservoir if we don't need to pump water uphill. We like to, during periods of low demand, everybody turns off their sprinkler. We can move water all the way from Kybers to Pollock Pines down all the way into Cameron Park and beyond. And we do that during periods of low demand. Slide 15, please. So you see on the top of this, I know it's a very busy slide, but I'll try to walk through it here. So on the top, you see all those pastel colors. That's where Jacobson Lake is typically, or Sly Park is typically operating. So it's in the 70 to 100% range. So we're typically from about 25,000 to 41. And that's the first year of a 2-year operations. But remember, we're in the second year now of a drought. Although first year we were, you know, everybody is focused on the pandemic, but we were in a drought last year. And so we're actually in year 2. So we're coming in around 25,000 acre feet this year, and that's that bright red line. And that shows you where we are as of the end of last month. And that dotted line is where we're projected to go based upon our current customer demand patterns. And that's without conservation. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I highlighted for you some of the years. There's only been 7 years where we've been down in this range over the years. That reservoir spills in almost 70% of the year. So we're fortunate that in most years it does spill, and we're hoping to refill that very quickly. These are very conservative numbers. As you can see, most time by the time we get to Thanksgiving and the holidays, the reservoir levels off, but we have to plan for very, very dry hydrology. We can't be wrong, right? So we need to be ultra conservative in our planning. So we're planning for a very dry fall, hoping that that's not the case. I also provide that dash line for you just to show if we didn't move that water through the tunnel, we'd be near the lowest elevation ever of that reservoir since its initial construction back during the 76, 77 drought. So, okay, next slide, please. And then as we all look down on the reservoir, this is quite striking to me, even being in this for 2 decades now. Again, that light blue polygon is your 50-year average of Folsom Reservoir storage. The lighter blue and the green is the storage levels during the last drought, 2014, 2015. Even then, we were 200,000 acre feet higher than we are this year, 200,000 acre feet. So that just really shows, see, we never got that spring bump where you always get a runoff. It's simply things are so dry, like a sponge, it just soaked into the ground. So we started off the spring, almost 250,000 acre feet less, about 20% less of the storage reservoir. And what we're aiming for, and with the Bureau of Reclamation, the rest of our agencies, is about a 200,000 acre foot storage level at the end of September. And they're doing their darndest to try to meet that. And that's so that come in the end of the year and early next year, we continue to be able to meet our customer demands and have water for the environment in the Lower American River. That, for comparison, that bright, or maybe the reddish line, I'm not sure if it's bright on your screen, but the reddish line is 1977. So we are doing better, but not much better than 1977. Slide 17, please. So this is an interesting comparison. So this is looking at the last 5 years of our customer demands. And we use our 2013, which is our last big demand year. As you can see, in April and May, our demands were far higher than our average over the past couple of years. Sometimes 57 to 40% higher, depending upon the month. But we're starting to trend back now. Obviously, everybody's aware of the drought. And typically, you turn on your sprinklers in the spring when Mother Nature doesn't. But then everybody turns on the sprinklers in the summer, and you get kind of to a more typical demand pattern. And it looks like we're getting closer to that, and trying to make sure to try to conserve storage for our late fall carryover. That dashed line is where that 15% conservation number would be. So I'll talk to you in a minute. Our board, as well as now as the governor, has asked people to conserve 15%. So that would be the ideal line to move to. But as you can see, that was, given where we were and where that number is, it's quite a bit of distance. But anything we can do to close that gap is going to help us if we go into a dry winter next year. Slide 18, please. But we're not alone. This is a regional comparison of everybody in Sacramento. As you can see, everybody, March, April, May, it was dry. We all turned on our sprinklers. You can see even down the Sacramento area, this is a regional water authority, which is we're a member of, which is all the water purveyors and municipalities in the greater Sacramento area. Everybody really, I only have numbers through May so far. I'm working on June numbers. But as you can see, everybody was irrigating pretty heavily this spring. And so that's where now the call for, you see that multiple times, probably per week. There's commercials now, and even the governor asking for conservation. We're trying to get back to, if not below, those curves of the past several years. Slide 19, please. So just real quick, we have a drought action plan. It's a 4-stage plan where we're under typical conditions, and then we move stage 1, 2 into 4. In 2014, 2015, we moved directly to stage 2 as a result of then Governor Brown's requirement for water conservation, and our specific agency target that year was 28%, and so therefore it's warranted to move to stage 2. This year, our board, which I'll talk to on June 28th, moved to a stage 1, which is a voluntary conservation asking for up to 15% conservation. And stage 1 is an alert of potential water shortage in the future. So obviously, if we don't get rain this fall, we'll be concerned about Jenkinson Lake storage. So we're trying to ask people to make voluntary efforts to reduce their conservation, but not having a mandated conservation placed upon our customers. And that's where we're hoping to move from stage 1 back to normal supply, hopefully at some point during the winter, and not need to migrate towards stage 2 if a drought were to continue. Slide 20, please. So as I said, on June 28th, our board adopt a resolution moving to stage 1 water alert, 15% conservation. There's no irrigation day restrictions. There's not a specific mandatory conservation. We're trying to do this all voluntarily and asking our customers to find their best way to achieve that conservation. We'll talk about some of those measures in a second. The district does operate 2 small satellite water systems, one in Strawberry and one in Outingdale, which is kind of the Somerset wine tasting region of our county. And that small system, they only can divert from the river, and the river is actually going dry. And it did again in 2015. And so pretty soon we'll be needing to truck water literally from the Pollock Pines, Pleasant Valley area down to our customers, and they'll be under a stage 4, which is more than 50% conservation, and their allocation only 50 gallons per person per day. So it's a tough time for our customers out there. They're not connected to our main system, so there's no other way to serve them. And then we're continuing, obviously, to evaluate conditions regularly. We give monthly updates to our board, and so encourage any member of the public that's interested to, similar to your board agenda packets, to view our board agenda packets, and there'll be fully detailed updates there. Slide 21. So last slide, just real quick on some of the measures, to try to get outdoor conservation. So more than half your water that you use at your house is used outdoors. If you have teenagers, maybe it's a little different. I have 2 teenagers at home. They use a lot of water. I'm always reminding them of that. But most of your water that you use is with your sprinklers outside. And if you think about it, if you cut 1 day out of your week, you would cut 14% off your irrigation. But it's actually easier and sometimes better to just reduce by a couple minutes per station. And what they say is starve your lawn and save your trees. Lawns are okay to get a little bit of yellow, but obviously we've all invested in our trees, our beautiful yards, and we want to help keep our permanent trees and shrubs alive and let the grass go a little yellow. It always comes back, more than we want every spring. We're dealing with weeds everywhere. We all know that. So the lawn's easy to come back. The trees are harder. The other way are leaks. We all have leaks and are trying to find where the rabbit or something is chewed through your drip system. And we have a lot of this information is all available on eid.org/drought, where we have a lot of easy tips and really striking sometimes of a dripping faucet, how much water you lose per day, and just simple ways to save. And lastly, I always like to let people know we like to talk about freebies. We do have a rebate system for some of our device upgrades. If you're upgrading an appliance or a water fixture, or if you'd like to look at an automated weather irrigation controller, we provide rebates up to $100, and all that information is available on that website there. And I always like to remind folks of the resources that we have available to them for water efficiency purposes. And that should be my last slide. We'll see what, yes, it is. Okay, there we go. That's beautiful Echo Lake there. So I know it's a lot of information. I know you have a big agenda, so I tried to run through that as quickly as I could there, President Easton, for you. So.
Well, thank you, Dan. And that was excellent and really a lot of good, important information. I'm sure there are some questions. Tend to start with our directors. I'll open that up for our board. Do you have some questions for Dan at this point from the presentation? Director Scobie, I see that hand. Director Bezet, I see you too. Director Scobie, let's start with you.
So you had listed on there to, avoid irrigation runoff. And I frequently walk our community and I do see runoffs from several yards, and I'm not sure how to approach to help them conserve or make them aware of it. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, that's a great question when we get often, because you don't want to be that neighbor. You always don't want to feel like you're the person that's. So what we try to tell people, if you know your neighbor, it's always easier to say, hey, did you know that if water's running off, it probably means you're irrigating your lawn a little too much, and you could save money and save water by just cutting back on the time. If you don't know that person, or if you're not comfortable, we do have what's called a water waste ordinance. It was a permanent water conservation measure that was put in place back in 2017. And so we do have that ability. We do water audits. We do have little door, in fact, I have one right here. We have little door tags. You want to see one of these on your door, and it's just say, hey, we noticed your water's running off. You might want to check, you have a broken sprinkler head. And we try to do it all on a volunteer basis. But so I guess the short answer is, if you know the customer or if you know your neighbor, that's always easiest. If not, you can call the district, and one of our staff who are out, reading meters or something will swing by and try to help our customers out. We don't want them to, waste water either. They're paying to water the street, and it doesn't really do any good. So thank you for that question.
Director Pazette.
Yes, Mr. Corcoran, 2 questions. First of all, thanks for the presentation. This is really very interesting and useful for us. I just wanted wanted to know more about the Outingdale. How many people are affected, and how long is that trucking going to have to happen? Is that going to happen until the rains come in the fall or the winter?
Unfortunately, yes, we are planning for about 120 days based upon what happened in 2015. We have 193 accounts out there. We average about 2.3 customers per account. Some of those are second homes, but we are trucking about 4 to 5 times a day. It's a specialized drinking water hauling truck that we'll be asking our board to approve that contract on Monday. It's on the order of $200,000. So anything we can do to have the ability to resume our regular diversions, obviously we want to do that as soon as possible, but we have to make sure that we have sufficient water quantity and quality. Obviously, a very dirty water, we need to make sure we meet our regulations. And we know, obviously, water coming from Jenkinson Lake will always do that. But that's, we're planning until really late October, early November, based upon what happened in 2015. And we're hoping, obviously, that we do get one of those early fall storms that really helps boost the stream flows. It does happen, but again, we always plan for the worst. So.
Are there other communities in that similar situation?
Yes, there are actually quite a few, and there's pending state legislation to help financially many of these. We're fortunate that the Outingdale community is part of the larger irrigation district, but a lot of small down in the San Joaquin Valley, unfortunately, that rely on dried up wells. That's where you typically see, but we do see some other surface communities. It doesn't attract as much attention because it tends to be smaller communities that don't have necessarily the resources that aren't in these larger areas. But it's unfortunately becoming more and more common, especially with those communities based on solely on groundwater, i.e. wells in the Southern Valley, especially. So.
Okay. My other question is, in the area of the Folsom Lake, all the massive development, I don't know, 30,000 homes there to the south side of 50, and I know they have contractual rights. How does that impact our contractual rights on the water at Folsom Lake?
Oh, great question. And I get a very similar question, which I'll answer as well. So, the city of Folsom, their water supplies, they rely solely on Folsom Reservoir. So they do not have the flexibility like we have of other locations. We are all effectively drinking from the same pot. So that's one thing that we continue to follow. But I would say, we're well aware of their current demand patterns and their projected future demands, and that factors into our long-term supply planning in terms of our ability and the access to our water down there. But in the city of Folsom, they've done additional, or I'd say they continue to do evaluations of their demand patterns to look at their per capita, their per customer consumption, and they've determined that the sufficiency, that they do have sufficient water supplies to serve their customers in that area. A question that we do get often is, well, are we taking our water and serving all of that development south of Highway 50? And we are not doing that. We do actually have a small portion, it's called the Folsom Heights development, right next to the freeway there, east of the sign, kind of where the Eldorado Hills sign is, that little area patched right in there. That is actually in the city of Folsom. That small area is about 500 customers the district will eventually serve. That was annexed to the district in the late 1980s. And there's a reason, and that's a multi-county tax basis, where by being present in multiple counties, that the state has less or limited ability to reallocate tax dollars back to the state because we're a multi-county agency. So that's why we have that area, but it's only about 500 of the, I think, 10,000 potential homes that are planned out in that area. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Pazette. Director Wooten, I saw that you had your hand up as well. You have a question?
Abby, you may need to unmute her.
Yeah, I think you're muted there, Director Wooten. Okay, we still can't hear you there. Are we able to unmute Director Wooten?
There she is.
There you are, Ellie.
Okay.
Go ahead. You can ask your question.
I was going to suggest that when the issue that Dr. Scobie brought up, the Director Scobie brought up, if she would give me a call, I can talk to Jim, who is super efficient in stuff that's going on, if he knows, and that might help solve the problem. Might, I said. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wooten. Director Carlson, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Thank you so much for the presentation. I did not know that EID got about a third of its water from Folsom Lake. I think that's really interesting that it does have to basically be pulled upstream, if you will. But I do read the newsletters that come in, and I'm really impressed with the sort of forward thinking about the many years in the future. And I'm also pleased to have, as you've said, a diversity of water supply here. So I've got to make a note to my family to start timing showers and make sure to continue to get the message out that if we can all conserve a little bit now, it could really help us not have to conserve so much later. So that's all. Thank you so much for the great presentation.
Thank you for those comments.
Dr. Scobie, another question?
Yeah, after hearing Felicity, I also do time my showers right now, but I was just curious, has EID considered any type of like financial incentive for residents to conserve besides the amount of water they save on their bill?
So we do have a volumetric pricing, and that's really how we try to achieve that, where you have your base, I think it's 1,500 cubic feet per cycle, and then you have a tier 2 and a tier 3. And that's how we try to achieve the conservation. Maybe did you have a different, sort of a different way to slice the pie that you would have in particular for financial incentives?
No, I was just curious what your district had been looking into.
Yeah, and that's what we do. I think maybe the other end is on the efficiency upgrades and things like that. But I think the main thing that we do is that we have a lower rate for what is sort of the base use. And then if you do, obviously we want to be able to provide people the option if they want to have a larger turf area, or if they want to have a large pool, those things that tend to use more water, you end up paying a multiplier on top of your base rate for that. The other way I think the incentives are things that we could do to help people. Like I said, outdoor irrigation is more than half your bill. And the things that we can do to help people, we have even on our website, sprinkler head reimbursement for more efficient sprinkler heads. Little simple things that don't seem like but over the course of a season, you'd be amazed at how much that adds up. Beautiful front lawn the kids play in, well, it ends up costing a good amount of money to water the lawn when you add it up. How many sprinkler heads, what that flow rate is. You do some math, you can make a big difference with just changing out your sprinkler heads. And there is a rebate program for that.
Yes, and I will echo that too. Just checking some of the things that we normally do. We changed out our water heater this last year because our bill was higher than we expected, and discovered that it was having trouble and leaking.
Yeah.
And it made a significant difference on the following bill. So even just some of the things we normally do, to be paying attention to that.
Yeah.
A couple questions I have before I open up to the public here. There's a larger discussion in the state, obviously, about water supply and perception too that there's been a lack of execution across the state for building up more infrastructure and reservoirs and pathways and all that. What are opportunities or possibilities in our district, in our county, for other reservoirs, for other water storage possibilities? Do we have any?
No, great question, and thank you for that question. It's one of the longer term foresight that we look at. So Yes, additional surface storage, additional dams in the county is, as you can imagine, obviously a very sensitive subject. But some of the things that are in our long-term master planning, our most recent master plan is 2013. It's on the district website. We're currently working to get a contractor on board to update that. We do have, back in 2005, the county water agency, the district, together worked with SMUD on their Upper American River project, the Crystal Basin Reservoirs, Union Valley, to actually allocate a portion of the supplies in those reservoirs for our future customer needs. So that is one sort of ingenuitive way of trying to have additional surface storage without building a new dam. There is one potential project that's considered alternative water supply, Alder Creek Reservoir up in the Upper South Fork American River watershed. That has been studied on numerous occasions back since the 70s. That is listed as a potential future site. But I think the prospects of that or it's listed as alternative are probably fairly low. I think realistically asking on a professional basis, I think it's probably not likely we're going to be constructing additional surface supplies within the county in the near future, at least.
What do you think it would take to push that over the edge in the big picture of water supply?
Yeah.
Of fire dangers, of development in our area?
Right.
What kicks that in?
Yeah, great question. So as we go through, unfortunately, this year being an example, as we go through these extreme hydrology periods of extreme wetness, extreme dryness, it seems to be more frequent. Severity, causation can be debated, but obviously we all look outside and see what's happening. As we get more of these years where we're telling people that there's not enough water to meet your basic public health and safety needs, that's really, I think, what's going to change. We're hoping that through some of these regional projects that purveyors are able to work together on. There's an off-stream reservoir on the Upper Sacramento that doesn't intuitively doesn't make sense of how it relate, but it would actually lessen some of the demands on Folsom Reservoir. It's called Sites Reservoir. It's a very a project that's a combination of state and federal working together. That's really where I think, at least for the foreseeable future, is more likely to see additional surface storage is a joint projects that take water off the main rivers during periods of wet hydrology, stored for periods of later hydrology or later demand periods to be able to store and to release water downstream.
And the last question I have before I open it up, recognizing that there are potential housing developments and other pieces in process in our county, particularly looking at Hills, Cameron Park, Shingle Springs, and then even up the hill near El Dorado, Diamond Springs, around that area as well. Do you have concerns, projections about how that's going to impact demand and need in these more extreme and heightened conditions?
Thank you. So every 5 years, the district, along with every other purveyor that has more than 3,000 connections, 3,000 customers, has to evaluate just that. What is the sufficiency of your water supplies during extreme dry years? And so we had to look at 5 consecutive dry years to determine, based upon the supplies I have or I foresee having for the next 30 years, and we determined that, yes, we do have sufficient supplies. Because we're fortunate right now, on an average year, we use less than half of the amount of water that we have available to meet our customer needs. So we are, I think, in a much better position than a lot of other agencies, but we're a growing agency, but we do have a legal obligation to revisit that on a district-wide basis every 5 years. On top of that, there's a state requirement that every time you have a larger development greater than, I think it's 250 or 300 connections, there's a separate evaluation of water supply sufficiency so that a land use agency doesn't approve a large development for which there's not sufficient supplies. So there are regular checks that go into that. And as we get into more of these extreme hydrology years, that is something obviously that will have to be factored going forward. But we just finished, actually last month, our board adopted the most recent urban water management plan. It's on our district website that evaluates our water supplies for the next 30 years. We do have, even in that third consecutive dry year or whatever it is, about 5,000 additional acre feet of water available.
Okay. Thank you for that. At this point, I'd like to open up to members of the public who are here who have questions or comments they'd like to bring to you too. So if you are in the attendees section, go ahead and raise your hand. If you want to make a comment or ask a question, we'll unmute you and call on you to come on in. Okay, I don't see any hands raised there. Well, thank you all for being here. And probably the reminder there too is if you have questions that come to mind after the meeting, Dan, what's the best place for members of the public to ask questions or make contact?
Great. Thank you very much for asking. I should have had that right on this last slide. So thank you. Obviously, our website is the easiest resource. We do have a, contact us. Depending upon the nature of your question, if it's technical, either one of my operations staff, I'm concerned my water smells funny, it looks funny, or I'm concerned, how do I have you come out and help me figure out how to save water? We actually have a staff member, a water use efficiency, come out and do an audit. I hate to say the word audit because it sounds like taxes, but they do a review of your property with you to say, hey, these sprinklers are here. If we change these out, there's a rebate that'll save you a good amount of water. So, but the district website is the best place to go. And then our staff, our customer service staff, can direct your question to the appropriate staff depending upon the subject. So.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Any last questions before we sign off on this piece from our directors? I think we had Sid, I saw your hand. You have one last question?
Yeah, just you mentioned the tunnels and the canals, and I was curious what percentage of those are uncovered and what percentage are covered. And I just know I remember there was a story in Mountain Democrat in one area of Pollock Pines where they did not want you to cover them, but it seems more efficient and cleaner, and you lose less water if they are covered. So kind of give me the numbers, what they look like, the percentages, and what your goals are.
Sure. No, great question. And I appreciate you asked that. So we do have our main hydroelectric canal is 22 miles from Khyber to the town of Pollock Pines. It comes right into Pollock Pines as you start to enter the residential development. So it's mostly forest land. We're not as concerned, obviously, about the potential for contamination or, obviously we do have some evaporative losses. It's on the south facing slope, fortunately. So as you know, it's colder and cooler. But as we get into the town of Pollock Pines, a large project that's actually underway now is to pipe 3 miles of the section between our forebay and our treatment plant that starts in our residential community in a different soil type. So there's two things that we monitor for there is seepage into the ground, as we, instead of overlying hardened bedrock, it goes into more soil. And then as well as runoff from upstream areas and the potential for, based upon our water quality monitoring, contamination. And obviously we have a treatment facility, but we want to make sure that obviously we have the highest quality water possible. And so that's why our board elected to pipe that 3 miles of section between Forebay Reservoir and our Reservoir 1 water treatment plant, called the Main Ditch Piping Project. There's a project highlight on our website and project updates.
So what percentage are uncovered at this point?
Let's see. So trying to think if there's of the perennial canals, we have about 20 miles of seasonal canals in South County that are unlined. Those operate just during the irrigation season. Most of the rest of the canals on the north side over here have all been converted to pipe water systems. So it's really just that the South County irrigation seasonal canals and then our hydroelectric canal, which it's 160 cubic feet per second. So it's a very large canal. That is, it's typically in like a wooden flume, a concrete flume, or a tunnel, or a gunite kind of pool liner. It's not overlying soil, which is what the ditch that we're piping now was just in a dirt ditch. So a little bit different circumstance.
So you're on top of that, and there's no major needs to improve on those?
We do actually I mentioned the annual outage every fall. We do go through. In fact, we're replacing some of the aging flumes, especially the ones that are wood timbers. Amazingly, some of them are still from the 1960s, and trying to upgrade them whenever possible to an in-ground canal or to a concrete canal. But those happen in the fall quarter each year. And that when our demands are less and we can meet all of our customer needs from up in this area of town or of the county service area from Jenkinson Lake. And so we're able to pump water around versus the main irrigation season where we need, all hands on deck, all 3 treatment plants operating fully.
Okay, thank you.
And I think with that, Dan, I want to recognize we have another presentation that we need to give time and attention to. But I'll encourage both directors and members of the public to be in touch with you and with EID with other questions. I'm sure there will be some that come out of this. And I know at least us as a board and those who are here are going to take what you've got and be encouraging ourselves and our neighbors to change out those sprinkler heads and all of this. I will ask, please keep in touch with us if we're moving to a different stage and how our CSD can be helpful in spreading that word, because we want that to be as efficient and as impactful as possible.
Thank you very much for that offer.
Not a problem. So thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate you having you here, and you're always welcome to stick around, but I'm sure you have other things to do.
I got to go get my kids out of the shower. They're probably wasting water right now. So.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's move to our next presentation. This is the California Climate Investment Grant project status. And Chief Gaines, I think this might be your last presentation with us.
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, I don't like the sound of that. Well, thank you for your patience to getting your turn in line, but we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So go ahead and take it away.
All right. Just want to review the Climate Investment Grant, the CCI grant that we received just over 2 years ago. This is the same presentation we presented to the Fire Committee in June, and they wanted us to bring this to the board for this month. So next slide, please. This is just an overview of the whole grant, what we started with, what we got, and what we've completed, and then our plans for the next 6 to 9 months before the grant runs out. So we received $250,000 for fuels reduction, $50,000 for education and fire prevention. And then with that was a 12% admin fee that will total $36,000 when we expend all the monies, for a total of $336,000. Next grant, or next slide, please. So to date, what we have contracted out, here's the total that we've contracted: $220,000 for fuels reduction. And then we've spent $39,000 on educational, such as the signs and mailers. And I will go through and show you what we've spent the money on for the contractual part of it. So next slide, please. So to date on the Pine Hill Preserve, we have a total of 48 crew days for a total of $10,000, and then a separate invoice for 24 crew days for $8,000. Most of that work was completed by Growlersburg Crews to work on the 100-foot fuel break and then widening it up to a 200-foot fuel break. So the total approximate 60 acres would be completed on the Pine Hill Preserve over there for their fuel break. So then, yeah, let's see what else we have on here. Work was completed from Palmer Drive to Meter Road that took about 72 crew days to complete that. And some of those days we had multiple crews. So if we had 4 crews in one day, that counted as, 4 crew days. Work was completed using fire hand tools, track chippers, and cutting and burning piles up there. So next slide. So here's some pictures of the crews working. You can see what they've done. This was over off of Meter on Pine Hill. So this is a picture, a little bit of the burning and the piles that they were able to get completed. That was this spring, this picture was taken. Next slide. Here's the area up off of above Palmer. And that's a picture of the track chipper there that the crews were using. So we used a combination. The track chipper works really well because you're able to cut the material, feed and chip all in one day, and it's gone, and we don't have to come back and they can continue moving. So as you can see to the sides of those pictures, that's how thick it was when they started, and they were able to just move right through with those track chippers. And they're driven with like a remote control. They have like bulldozer type tracks on there, and so they're real handy machines. Next slide. We spent a total of $9,600 for a CEQA that was performed by El Dorado Resource Conservation District. And we had to get that completed to treat any fuel reduction work on the CSD for CSD properties. So the Pine Hill Preserve, we worked under the federal NEPA that the BLM had. So we were able to start right away on the Pine Hill Preserve, and then while the district was going through the CEQA process for district properties. And then this CEQA will also be good for any future projects even past the grant. So next slide. We did some herbicide spraying. This last fiscal year, we treated up to 12 parks for a total of $18,000. And then the year before, we treated $12,000 worth of spraying herbicide spray. So all the district's parks and open spaces were sprayed at different times. And a lot of this is to help treat some of the field breaks that were cut to keep them that way. And then also expanding on some of the other treatment and work areas that we had. Next slide. Royal Park. So we spent a total of $32,550. Fuels reduction work was completed at Royal. So we treated a total of 11 acres Royal Park, and that's right off Cameron Park Drive. And we showed you some pictures of that before, but that turned out great. Project took about 2 weeks for the contractor. Next slide. Here's some before and afters at Royal Park. You can see we were real happy with the way it turned out. They did a great job in there. Next slide. The creek area behind the CSD, that's that little drainage that runs. It's not real, it's about an acre or two back in there that was just kind of really overgrown between the homes and stuff, but the district does own that. So that cost $16,000. We were able to treat that 2-acre creek in there and remove some bigger hazard trees that the district needed to have out. So we were able to take care of all of that under this grant. Next slide. Gateway Park, where that was one of the bigger ones, $53,000. We treated just under 13 acres, that whole area inside there. We removed multiple dead hazard trees in there, really thinned out the blackberries and a lot of the dead vegetation that was in there, and cleaned that area up just to make it a little more fire resistant in there. That was also Gateway Park, is where we held the community meeting. And I think after that, it turned out really well in there. And I do think most of the residents were pretty happy with our work. Next slide. Oh, here's pictures of Gateway. You can see before and after how thick it was up against there. And, you know, like we just heard of the current drought, this area is a green belt, but when it does dry out in there, it can be a fire hazard with the amount of activity in there. So it is nice to have that bigger buffer from that to the structures in there. So next slide. The disc golf area. So that was a total of $35,000 for 13 acres in there. We worked with the disc golf folks, Mike Grassley and his folks, and we were able to get a lot of work done in there and limb up a lot of the trees, 10 feet high, and really get a lot of the dead brush and thin the blackberry bushes. So I think all in all, everyone was happy with what we were able to complete in there. Next slide. Knollwood Park, we spent $23,000 on that 6-acre park the district owns back in there. A lot of that had not been touched in a long time. So we were able to complete a full 30-foot fire break around the perimeter. On 3 sides of it's that triangle piece. So it was 3 sides of that one. And there was a lot of thick and dry vegetation in there, blackberries. So that area is near Bass Lake over there. So that turned out really well. Next slide. We purchased a couple of Easy Ups with all our symbols on there for $17,000. We're hoping to use those hopefully here soon for, public education events. I know you guys have seen them when you came over to Station 89, but we're real happy with the way those came. And I'm hopeful that this year we can get back out and start holding some community events, and we'll be able to have a nice setup to hand out, education materials and have some, it'll help bring folks to that area, I think, too, so we can start educating. And there's pictures of those. So in 2020, we had 7,500 mailers we sent out for $5,800. And these ones were a little more expensive. It was the postcards with the magnets that were sent out. So that's kind of been our goal, is to educate the public on fire safety, what they can do. And so every year we're trying to send a little different message. 2020, it was more of the Ready, Set, Go campaign, to have a plan, know your escape routes, know what to do when you leave. And that was our goal for that year. Next slide. This was the mailer, kind of talked about a plan, what you need to do. Next slide. And then in 2021, we sent out 7,500 mailers for $3,100. Obviously, there was no magnets, so it was a little bit cheaper that year. This one talked about, the proper defensible space, hardening your home, fire-resistant landscaping. Next slide should have the example. So this is what was sent out this year. So talks about online burn permits, a lot of good information on there for the community. Next slide. And then our interactive signage that we put up throughout the community. We had 5 of those big signs that were put up. That cost total of $13,000 at Krista McAuliffe Park. Rasmussen, the dog park, Paul J. Ryan, the community center, and over off Bass Lake. And then we also ordered, $12,000 in prevention signs, and then $3,800 in additional signs, or $3,200 in additional signs that we ordered just this year, so we can start replacing and rotating for the different messages. So those were 4x8s there that turned out pretty nice. And then we just completed, maybe that's what that last sign over at Krista McCullough, we had 5 signs over there that we just completed and got put in just in the last couple of weeks. That's all completed. So if you get a chance to go by Krista McCullough Park, they're right there by the playground. So those turned out really nice. Next slide, please. Any questions on this? I do have one more map I want to show that was just sent. So let me pull that up real quick. So this was a map built by BLM. They shared with us, so you can see the blue line is what we completed in the year 2019, total of 26 acres. The yellow line is what we were able to complete in 2020 for 43 acres. And then 2021, that was just this spring, we were able to complete 15 acres around the Pine Hill Preserve. So you can see we've done a lot of work in there. That's what's been completed. And then we're going to continue this project in the fall. Once fire season slows down and we can get the crews back out there, we'll continue that until the grant expires in March of 2022. So any questions?
I'll start with one question. As we're coming near the end of this grant, and you did a good job of showing us the signage, and I love having that around the community. Wondering if there had been any thought given to freeway signage for our community coming in and out, similar to something simple, because obviously driving down the freeway, they're not going to read a lot of text, but some kind of, y'all have done a great job messaging this, red, yellow, green, ready, set, go, simple and memorable. Has there been any thought given to some kind of freeway signage, even over by like David West or something?
No, there's not. I know CAL FIRE has the sign as you come up Bass Lake, as you approach when you're heading eastbound on Highway 50, there is that CAL FIRE sign on there. It's a lot more difficult to put signage along the freeway because you have to get the Caltrans easement, and it goes through a whole process on that side. And it's very, in Caltrans, they have very specific signage and parameters that you have to work within. So we have not put a whole lot of thought into that. I know we've talked about possibly some digital signage to put up maybe in front of Station 89 to talk about red flag warnings. And, we're looking into that for the remainder of the educational piece to see what we can do. We're hoping to send out mailers again in the springtime of 2022 before the grant expires, but we are looking at some other different kind of options, maybe something we can change, but just finding the right location for that would be, we're looking at that too.
Okay, so Station 89 itself might be potential
Yeah, and if it was
You're
some
right.
kind of a digital sign, but I guess our concern there is too, we don't want it too bright at night, or maybe it just be during the daytime. So we don't want to make the neighbors upset if we have big, flashing LED lights up
Right,
front.
right.
So,
Great.
Director Easton,
Yes,
we have a video from Gary Campbell, Fire Safety Council member and Sierra Community Access Television Channel 2. So before we conclude staff's presentation, I wanted to, it's a 3.5-minute video about the work that was done out of the Pine Hill Preserve that he prepared for all of you tonight. If I could show that.
Yeah, it also looks like Ellie has a question,
Yeah,
but she'll
If
need
we
to
could-
unmute herself.
yeah. If we could do the video first, and then we'll conclude staff's presentation, and then Ellie can ask her question.
that sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks for the reminder, Joe.
Yeah. Abby's gonna do the stop screen share, put up the video. So give her a minute.
Sorry, guys, I'm working on it.
And I will say that Sherry and Jed haven't seen this, but so we're just acknowledging that it came in from a Fire Safe Council member, and we're really appreciative of the footage that he took of the work crews out there. So
Sorry.
got it, Abby, or you want some help?
I got it.
Oh, there you got it. You stopped your share.
Hmm.
Let me some help.
Yeah.
So I couldn't help very much. So what we'll do is we'll bring it to the fire committee. And then if it works with the fire committee, then we will bring it to the board.
Sounds good.
Good. Well,
Thank you,
any
Joe.
questions on, I just kind of wanted to bring this to you guys to show you an update of, just kind of what we've done in the last 2 years with this grant and where we are, and then kind of our plans for the future. We are slowing down, or we don't have a whole lot of money left on the fuels reduction part, but we have enough budgeted that we're going to continue focusing on the Pine Hill Preserve. Soon as we can get on that, that's we've felt we've done a lot on the district properties, and we're comfortable with what we've done, and we want to move on and just continue the rest of the money towards the Pine Hill Preserve and getting that that 200-foot fuel break all the way around.
Thank you, Jed. Jill, as we move to director questions, it looked like Director Bazette got kicked off. He's now in the attendees section. If you could pull him back over to the panel,
Oh, he did.
that'd be great. And while she's doing that, open up for any questions or comments from directors before we open up to the public. Director Wooten, I see your hand. If you can unmute yourself, or Abby, if you could help her with that.
So
Bottom left of your screen, Ellie.
there she goes. You're
There it
there,
is.
Ellie.
We got you, Ellie. Oh,
Oh,
Not
you
now.
muted
Nope.
yourself.
you're muted again. Let's try that one more time. There you go.
I just have one question. I
Sure.
received a booklet and it's really very good. It's called Prepped and Ready. But who sent these out? I'd like to know.
Prepped and ready. That's a good question.
It is a
That-
great book. And whoever
Yeah.
sent them, there's one page here that says prepared a disaster supply kit.
Okay. Yeah.
But I just want to know who sent this out because it's really excellent.
Yeah.
The
No,
knowledge that's sent out.
Well, it wasn't us, but that's good to know. We'll have to do a
No, it
little
wasn't
research
us,
on it.
but I'm wondering if Chief Gaines is the Cal Fire sent them or who would send these out.
Yeah, I don't think Cal Fire would send them in general. That'd be quite a bit to send.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I don't know. We'd have to take a look at that.
I'll bring it up to CSD when I go up there next.
Okay, perfect.
It is really explanatory on the things you have to have ready, the things you should do, the garden and all that. But I'd like to know who put it out.
Yeah.
We can find that out for you, Director Wooden.
Oh, okay. Thank
Uh,
you.
No problem. Dr. Scobie, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation, Jed. Two questions come to mind. First, I'm curious about the math on the 60 acres. Is that when you sum the width along the distance that you come up with 60 acres?
I actually, that 60 acres should have been 90. I think we projected closer to 90, so that may have been a typo on there, but we did project closer to 90 acres initially on the Pine Hill Preserve. But when we first put this together, it was 90 acres for the 100-foot field break. And once you start doing the 200-foot, it will obviously add more on the areas that we do the 200-foot field break. So initially it was closer to 90 acres treated on Pine Hill Preserve.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had is you had mentioned rotating signs. So how often, what kind of schedule do you have to rotate those signs and who's responsible?
Well, that's a good question. We talked about that as well. Obviously, the signs are at Station 89. We got some new signs and we put them in, and a couple of them started peeling right away. So the quality was not that good. So we actually returned them, and they're at the sign company getting remade right now. So we were just hoping to maybe rotate them around to the different parks. So folks that have seen one sign, we could, bring something else with a different message and just kind of rotate them throughout the parks differently. Probably, we're just thinking the spring and fall type rotation. I mean, it wouldn't be, once a month. I think that's a little much, but, and it would be just our staff to do that.
Okay, and there's already like those, did you say it was like 4x4 or 4x2 frames already installed at the
Yep.
locations you'll rotate through?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I
Mhm.
had.
Thanks, Director Scobie. Director Bazette, see your hand there. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
You're muted, Sid.
You're muted there, Director Bazette.
Okay, pardon
Join
me.
the club.
You can hear me now. I am a strong proponent of electronic signs. I really think ultimately that's where you should go, that you have a constantly changing message that people are looking up to there by Station 89. There's just so many important messages, and I just don't think a printed sign can quite duplicate that. So, I mean, that's with the funds from the education part or something, I hope that's a consideration, because I really think that's the right direction to go. The other thing I just want to comment, I think you've done an extraordinary amount of work with that grant, and I'm very impressed with that. And before you leave, I want to commend you for that, Jed. It's really impressive what you guys have accomplished, and thank you. And your leadership is obviously a big part of that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
We've also applied through the American Rescue Act for that sign that we're talking about putting out in front of Station 89. It's electronic. We can type it in and have different messages. And
Right.
so I don't know if it'll be approved, but we're definitely looking at different avenues to fund that too.
I'm all for it.
Mm.
Thanks, Chief Morantz, too. Any other questions? Director Carlson, I see your hand. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, but really more importantly for the breathtaking amount of clearing that has taken place in our community. I know we're still at high risk, but it's really reassuring to see the amount of proactive work that's gone into doing this. So I'm so grateful. I have two very down to the ground questions, going from the high level to down to the ground. I'm curious how you use trunks to mitigate, you said it was flooding at residences in Gateway Park. I think you said that you took old tree trunks that have been cut down from the cottonwoods and it would help mitigate flooding. How does that work?
They just kind of line some of just where the creek runs, they just kind of lined them up on the upper side up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
That
Just
makes
as
sense.
little natural little barriers right there.
Got it. And then you said the word easy ups and that you guys have 2 easy ups. And I know that there's a lot of crowds at the Cameron Park pool that don't have any shade this summer. I don't know if there could possibly be any way that the easy ups could be used at the pool for this, maybe a busy day or two before the end of the season. Maybe, I don't know if it combined with some outreach, but I heard the word easy ups and I know there's some people that are hot at the pool. I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, that's something we definitely talk about. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for this amazing work that's been done. So.
Yeah, no, I do really feel that, the work we've done and putting the message out there has helped, because even this year alone, you drive around the district and you just see more and more lots that are cleaned up. And as we go out and talk to people, and when we have our weed abatement specialists out there talking, people want to do the right thing. They just need to be educated on it. And when you take the time to talk to them and send these mailers out and kind of lead by example, I think on some of the district lots as well, to show people what we're looking for, I think it makes a big difference.
Yes, and more than just the clearance, you've helped begin a culture in our community of what people should be aiming for and can expect. So that's wonderful. Let me go and open this up to public for any comments or questions. I see your hand there, Barbara. If we could go ahead and unmute her.
Good evening. Well, Jed, I'm really going to miss you. I want to wish you the best of luck in your new gig in Tahoe. You'll be so much closer to home. But I also, I'm just going to reiterate to everybody on this board, I've been the biggest, I think, cheerleader of this agency for the past 17, 18 years, and how fortunate we are to have these individuals who have saved this community so much money in tax dollars by going after grants and in this huge grant and just doing everything they can to help make our community fire safe. So I'm just so grateful for everything that all of these people, past and present, have brought to our community, and want to remind all of you how lucky you are to have them here, because I don't think this would be happening if we had someone else in here. And with that said, Jed, I want to ask you, when you clear up on Pine Hill, how long before the vegetation will start to grow back and create, the hazard again? I mean, do you know a timeline on when things will start reversing themselves up there?
Well, obviously,
everything done the clearing.
Yeah, everything will grow every year, a little bit. We got a good start. It's something that's probably going to have to be looked at, every 2 or 3 years. And but I think this initial push in getting this done is a very good start, and it makes it a lot easier to come back in and retreat in the future. It's just a big lift. You've seen how thick it was where where they started, and now that we have that cleared, it's a lot easier to come in. But these field breaks will last for several years, and obviously it's just going to depend on the winters and the growth we get. So yeah, it will last for for several years. It's hard to put an exact time frame on it. It could be 3 to 5 years before you need to retreat it again. You will get some of the lighter fuels will grow back, but it will take a while for the thicker manzanita bushes and the thicker brush to start coming back.
And how many acres is Pine Hill? Do you know off the top of your head? Just
No, you
ballpark?
got me on. I knew at one point, I don't have it right in front of me.
It was,
Well, you know, I decided
300
to.
and something acres,
Go
I
ahead,
think.
Sherry.
I thought it was 300 and something acres, but I'm not.
Oh, well, I decided to drive up the end of Palmer the other day, off where it goes up off the pavement. Well, it's still paved, but goes up in there.
Yeah.
And I got to the first house, it said no trespassing. I decided to turn around, but I just thought, I can't believe people live up there. That's all I'm gonna say. It's like, I mean, and that's not part of Pine Hill, right? Where at the end of Palmer, where it goes up back where the residences are.
Off of Loma, where it turns into Loma?
I guess that's the name of the street, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're just right off the boundary of the Pine Hill Preserve. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty crazy. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Uh-huh.
Thank you, Barbara. All right, any other comments from public? I don't see there was anybody else to do that. So we'll go and close public comment and bring this back to the board. Any last comments or questions from board members? Thank you. Jed, you covered this pretty significantly. Director Carlson, yes.
Yeah, according to pinehillpreserve.org, and I can't vouch for who puts that up. It is Pine Hill Preserve contains a total of 4,746 acres.
But some of that.
Yeah, that's all out of the area. I think we're talking
Okay.
403 acres, I believe, is right there in Cameron.
Okay, got it. So we have about 10% of Pine Hill.
Yeah, I'm Googling the same thing you are. There's a bunch of different areas all over the county. They're Pine Hill.
I know it goes
Yeah,
all the
so-
way north up. I
Yeah.
mean, this is kind of irrelevant, but it goes all the way up to like the American River and a little bit
Yep.
over
Right.
the American River and
Yep.
south of
Yep.
Highway
Correct.
50.
Yep.
But it's big and beautiful and native and highly inaccessible and all kinds of brush. So
Yes.
Well, Jed, this is our opportunity as Director Bazette had started on this too, and Barbara said to say thank you for the amazing work you've done with this.
Yeah.
I know we've got a little bit of time left in the grant. We won't get to see you in it, but please know that we are really grateful to you personally for your work in this. And I hope every time you drive through here, hopefully you drive through here again,
Oh, yeah.
that you'll see the very real physical impact of your work and presence in our community.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. And it's been a pleasure working down there. I really enjoyed my time. So it was a
And
tough decision, but it does allow me to get closer to home. And that's the biggest reason why I'm doing it. So
That for you.
although, my first official week up here, we did have that fire down in Alpine County. So it's been a busy last week on the Tamarack fire. So
And as I said before, he's still going to have battalion coverage of Cameron Park, like frequently.
yeah,
So
I'll be
even though he's
around.
yeah, he's still around.
Okay, occasional donuts.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and for the presentation to the whole board for this. This, not just the work here, but this inspires us to continue this kind of pursuit.
Yeah.
Grants and clearance and all of that. So thank you so much. You've helped
No,
us.
I just want to thank all you guys for the support over the last couple of years. I think we've accomplished a lot, and it's because of all your support. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Then we finished our recognitions and presentations. Now we move into our open forum for non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda that falls within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. So I'll open up the forum for non-agenda items at this point. Any member of the public would like to raise their hand and speak to something, you can do that now. Okay, seeing no hands, I will go ahead and close open forum for non-agenda items, and then we move into the approval of the consent agenda.
Director Asteen, I'd like to propose a 5-minute break since we've been meeting for an hour and a half.
Let me take a quick look here. Okay. Do I have a consensus among directors? Take a 5-minute break? Okay, I see another couple thumbs up. So we will take a 5-minute recess. Abby, if you would go ahead and pause that for us and we'll continue. Thank you. We are resuming our meeting at the Cameron Park CSD. It's 8:06. We are picking up on our agenda at the approval of the consent agenda. And this is where we'll have any questions or comments or additions. What I would ask that any approval of this, there's a couple of minor corrections for the consent agenda. If I can go ahead and list those, and I can email that later to Jill. The first one would be on conformed agenda for May 19. Item number 13 had the incorrect initials for the director. That was relating to the ad hoc committee, so that should have been EA instead of EW. And then change to the conformed agenda for June 16 in matters to and from. That should also be EA instead of EW. So if somebody has a question or would like to make a motion with those corrections involved.
This is Director Carlson. This is Director Carlson. I move to approve the consent agenda with the aforementioned corrections.
And I will second.
So we have a first and a second. General Manager, roll call, please.
Director Easton,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette. And
You are muted there, Sid.
I'd get Ellie on.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you very much. And Director Scobie
Aye.
and Director Wooten.
Aye.
Perfect, Ellie.
And Dave's not here to help me.
All right, thank you everybody for that. We will move from the approval of consent agenda now into our general business. And we will start with number 10. This is the public hearing to approve resolution 2021-21, approving the engineer's report regarding collection of assessments for LLIDs for the fiscal year 2021-22. I would like to officially open the public hearing at this point. With that, General Manager, would you lead us into this?
Yeah. So we were here last month at the Board of Directors with a preliminary engineer's report and associated budget and assessment rates, which you reviewed and scheduled our public hearing for tonight. I just wanted to recap some of the changes that have gone on with our LLAD budgets for you. Because we did make some pretty good changes, really looked at the LLAD budgets. We added some overhead costs for the district. So our accounting specialist that pays the bills, portion of our park superintendent's time that oversees and supervises the staff that are out there, processing payroll. Those overhead costs are just staff time at this point. It doesn't include any office supplies or say computer time or anything like that. But this is our first start at having the LLAD support the districts and our processes here to make them work. Also, SCI cost used to be divided equally between all of the LLADs. We did ask Arcilia to take a look at that. And so now it's proportioned out as far as what time, how much time is spent in each one of the LLADs. And I forgot to welcome Arcilia Ferreira to our meeting tonight. Thank you, Arcilia, for being here. She can answer any questions after the staff report too. Also, we took a look at the LLADs that had a fairly significant fund balance. And those that had a fairly significant fund balance and a fairly healthy budget, we are not assessing this year and will not assess. An ideal fund balance from, according to Arcelia, is about 6 months worth of operations. So we're going to take some of those fund balances and pare them down. So that's it. So those are changes that we have made. I think that there are still additional review that we can do moving forward. Interest rates, when Director Scobie and I talked today about interest rates are going down. We really did not take a good look at those this year with that in mind. So our budget might be a little high on that. Also, let me see, let me make sure I've got everything. I do want to let you know that Mike Grassley has an appointment here in the next few days with a contractor who is changing out street lights to LEDs. And it is a subcontractor of PG&E. So much like what we did at the pool and in the community center, as far as an on-bill financing and getting the street lights changed out to LEDs, at our facilities and our fire stations, we may be able to do that as well with the streetlights. And so some of those LEDs that don't have an escalator and are losing money every year because of the electricity costs, we may be able to address that here pretty soon. So that was some good news from Mike. So with that, before I conclude my comments, I want to bring your attention to a couple of corrections that are needed in the engineer's report. And I think Director Scobie and her detail searching on these things. So anyway, the David West assessment, which Abby may need to make a little bit bigger. The David West assessment is an incorrect number. It was a math error on the district's part in that it was representative of a total amount of revenues from fees and assessments, not just the assessment. So that number that is currently 34,970, and it's still too little, Abby. I don't know. Oh, it's highlighted in yellow. You can see it.
Yes.
And then yellow. That number that's 34,970 actually should be 18,150. If you if you take the $165 assessment times 110 parcels, that gets you to the 18,150. So I think you're good, Abby. I think everybody can see it.
Yeah.
So that's correction one. And then the second correction is 2 pages down, and it is in our map. Most of the LLADs are LLAD 32 or LLAD 41, and it's the fund number. For LLAD number 8, which Abby has kind of circling there with her cursor, that is LLAD 8. It's Cameron Woods number 8. It's actually Fund 47. So we can go ahead and we'll make that correction as well. So I just wanted you to know that when it comes time to approving the resolution, we would like you to approve it with those couple of corrections. And we can do that. Those things do not affect the assessment value. And so the assessments, we can make the changes and not change the assessment. So Arcelia, did I leave anything out?
No, you did not. You covered everything beautifully.
Thank you for being here tonight, Arcelia. Appreciate your presence. All right, so with this, I'm assuming the directors, you've had the chance to read through this. And Director Scobie, again, thank you for fine-tuning those couple of items for us. Do we have any other questions at this point from the directors before we open it up to public comment? Director Scobie.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. First of all, if you could bring back up the map. I have a question on the map again. And then the second question is, do the LLADs go through the Budget and Admin Committee? So as we continue our, enhancements of these reports, I'm just curious which committee is going to see these.
Yes, the answer is this does go through at Budget and Admin.
Okay. And then my second question is on the map and specifically LLAD 41. It looks like it's cutting a couple of parcels in half. And so perhaps that can be corrected as well.
Which parcels do you think? I can talk to Jill, but yes, Jill, if we can get
41,
together
yeah.
on that and discuss that tomorrow, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, if there is an error, I don't know. It just looks different than all the other parcels. All the other boundaries look different to me than that one there. But I mean, I could be wrong.
I see what you're talking about, Monique. It's like the north, on the north side.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
but who knows?
Yeah.
We
And-
can certainly double check that.
Yeah, just
That might
double
be
check
actual-
would be great.
That might be actual property boundaries as I'm looking at it there, because those are proportionally the same as what's around them.
It could be, absolutely.
So,
Just double
Thank-
check, please.
thank you. Any other questions from directors?
This is Director Carlson. I just want to say that I appreciate the more nuanced approach to looking at each LLAD as more of a individual special case than just treating them all the same. So I think this is a good way to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Director Carlson. All right, unless there's any other questions, we'll go and open it up to the public at this point. If any member of the public would like to ask a question or speak to this item, please feel free to raise your hand now. Okay, seeing no hand, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring this back to the board. This is where we also get to say this is another step in the process we've been doing for at least a couple of years now, we've done with a few things of cleaning this up and clarifying and getting clearer understanding of what it costs to do these, and now cleaning up. I'm really pleased that we're to the point where we can pause assessments in some LLADs because they built up a fund balance, and we're taking care of our community that way. I know we've still got at least a couple that are going to need to be addressed in the future with deficit spending or lower balances because there aren't accelerators. But it's nice to know that that's a limited and short list, and we're already beginning to address those things. So I'm pleased with this. So thank you, staff, for your good work with all that. Any other comments from the board? Director Scobie.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. Thanks for bringing that up. Is there a way that we can tout the fact that, you know, we are being fiscally responsible, and for those LLADs in good health, that we're pausing the assessment? I think that is really good news and reflects well on the work that's been done here.
Right.
So how would we go about doing that?
Well, we started. Mike is actually in conversation with residents out at Eastwood. Diana Anderley, who served on our LLAD ad hoc committee, reached out to us wanting to make some improvements to her park. And so Mike can talk a little bit more about it, but we did tell her that we were not assessing them, and they were really happy about that.
I don't know how complicated it would be, but how complicated would it be to identify those LLADs and just to send out a postcard note? Or is that, I mean, well, I've got to manage staff's time for that, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly, take a look at how we could do that, create a mailing list, and then send it out. They will see it on their tax bill as well when their tax bill comes out. So we would charge the LLAD for that. So, that would get it. So
Right. So we're saving you money, but we're spending a little bit.
we're going to spend it on a postcard.
Right.
So
yeah, the simple first step might just simply be that's something we can post on the website about LLADs with a general statement of some LLADs will be experiencing a pause in their assessments. Watch your tax bill and celebrate it too.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably a good way to do it.
Lean and mean.
Okay. So do we have any other questions from the board regarding this?
Yeah, this is Felicity. I know we've talked a little bit before about communicating this to the residents, and I don't know if it's something that would be worth a press release or a mention to the Mountain Democrat or one of us writing an article, you know, in the Democrat. I don't know if it would stir up more dust than it would settle, if you will, but those are a couple thoughts. A press release, in my opinion, it needs to be well done, but at the same time, it can be pretty simple to do.
Yeah, Jonna was actually on as an attendee earlier. She's off now.
I know.
Yeah, I can talk to Jonna, but you know, I think that's a great suggestion because I do think that the general manager's column is read pretty widely.
Yes.
It is something that I could put, that would be very easy to put it in the general
Yeah,
manager's.
I like it.
I do too.
Dr. Scobie, I see you're in.
Yeah, because I also think it's important because it's paused and they are going to see it come back. And so I think it's important that we set the stage that this isn't paused for, you know, forever. It's because they have a healthy fund balance, and because we typically only hear things when they don't go, when they're perceived as not going well, and they're going to notice their bill going up more than they're going to notice their bill going down.
And that might also be a place, Jill, to plant a seed that some of our LLADs don't have accelerators. And so we're looking down the road where some of them are going to have to address that. So, all right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board before we move to an action on this? Okay, so at this point, remind me, General Manager, in some of these public hearings, we would read the resolution. I would propose that we waive the reading of this. And
You'll want to close public hearing too.
oh yes, thank you very much. So at this point, we'll close public hearing and we'll bring this to the board for action. And with the reminder that any action here, proposal or motion would want to include the corrections the general manager listed, as well as any potential waiving of the reading of the resolution.
Well, this is Director Scobie. I'd like to make a motion to waive the reading of Resolution 2021-21 in its entirety and approve it with the minor corrections as discussed.
I'll second that motion.
Motion from Director Scobie, a second from Director Bazette. General Manager, would you do roll call, please?
Director Easton?
Aye.
Director Bazette?
Aye.
Director Carlson?
Oh, nice alphabetical. Aye.
Director Scobie?
Aye.
Director Wooten?
Aye.
All right, 5-0 vote. Thank you, directors, for that. All right, let's move on to pull up my agenda here. Our next item, this is number 11, public hearing to approve resolution 2021-22, stating the purposes and fixing the amount of money to be raised by taxation to the district to pay voter approved debt for the fiscal year 2021-22 and setting the tax rate. At this point, we will officially open the public hearing for this resolution. And Christina, I believe you are the one leading us into this.
Hello. So each year we have to adopt a resolution to levy a tax on all taxable property within the district to pay back the GO bond. And so we have to do some calculations on how much our payments are going to be for the next fiscal year based upon property value within the district. So after I used a spreadsheet that the county actually had provided us with, it looks like the cost this year would be 0.022042 per $100 of secured assets. And last year's rate was 0.021959. It does go up a little bit each year because our loan payments go up each year. So we just have to take into account that our payment for the following year is more than what it was last year. And that's why we see it, we kind of see a little bit of an increase every year.
Thank you, Christina. All right, any questions from the board? Dr. Scobie.
I think I ask this question every time I see this because I always want to know when we're going to pay it back. So I'm wondering if in the future, so that's my first question. When will we have it paid off? And perhaps we can like add that to our agenda, transmittal, so I quit asking every year.
Give me 1 second. It might be-
We just had the a 10-year anniversary of the community center, I think 2 years ago. So I think Christina can double check, but I think you're maybe 11 or 12 years into this bond. And it's a 20-year bond.
Yeah, it looks like it should be paid off in 2030. August of 2030.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, any other questions, directors, before we open it up? Director Bassett.
Yeah, my question is, why does it increase each year? Why is it that way rather than a set amount?
Jill, do you want to answer that question? I don't know. This bond was, I mean, it's like she said, it's pretty old. So I don't know. It looks like it was refinanced or refunded in 2014. And that just looks like, you know, it goes up from 2017. It goes up a little bit every year. But I can't tell you why they funded the loan that way, to be perfectly honest with you.
We can find out, you know, what the details are on that, Sid. I don't know that I would have that information for tonight.
Because I'm assuming it's tied to bond rates or something like that, you know, federal interest rates. Why would it be going up if interest rates are down? No.
Yeah, we can find out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions from the directors? Okay. So
Yeah, when you find out that answer, could you BCC me too? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, we're gonna, and we would do the same with the boundaries for LLAD 41. I'll let everybody know.
Thank you.
All right, let's open this up for public comment at this point.
Did you opened up the public hearing, right?
Yes, we opened up the public
Okay,
hearing at
good.
the beginning. Okay, seeing no hands, I will go ahead and close public comment. And at that point, we'll also close the public hearing. So bring this back to the board. Do we have any other questions or an action on the resolution?
This is Monique. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-22. And we don't need and waive the reading of this. You have the right one up there, right?
Mm-hmm. That is it. All right, so we have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
And we have a second for Director Bazette. All right, General Manager, would you please call roll?
Director Easton,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Wooten.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0 vote to pass the resolution number 2021-22. Thank you all for your work with that. Thank you, Christina, for bringing that to us. All right, so with that,
Director Easton, I just have a point of order question.
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize, but going back to earlier in the meeting, Jill had said something. Do we need to read an agenda for another concurrent meeting?
We need to approve the special meeting agenda, and thank you for that. I have a note here to do that. We cannot move into the meeting until we approve that agenda. We plan to do that after the presentation.
Okay.
We had a break, so I apologize I dropped that, but we're still, I believe, within the bounds of what we can do here. And council, feel free to jump in and correct us.
That's fine. You can do it at any time. It probably makes most sense to wait until just before we go into closed session, but you can do it at any time.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. And thank you, Director Carlson, again, paying attention to details. All right, so we move now into our board information items. And we'll start with our committee chair report outs, moving first into budget and administration. So that would be Director Carlson and myself. Most of what we covered this month you would have seen tonight.
And it was Director Scobie that attended in my place, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the direction on that. And thank you, Director Scobie, for filling in on that. Our last meeting, we had a couple of items come to us, part of which was Christina brought to us a request or a proposal for an internal audit scope of work and costs. So we had discussed that and asked staff to go back and take a look at how that might fit in the budget if that were to be approved. We did some discussion on strategic plan succession and organizational chart review. Part of the discussion there is recognizing that particularly in our departments, our department heads, we want to make sure we're setting up an organizational structure where there's some kind of succession so that whether it's a department head that is on vacation or out, there's somebody who can backfill behind them, at least, whether it's for a temporary or whether they move on to another position, so that we don't lose institutional knowledge, we don't lose process. And so staff is working both to identify that as part of our structure and part of our process for hiring and defining positions. So that applied directly to both Parks and Rec and Finance as we were looking at that. Let's see, we did a report on the status of Facilities and Parks Reserves, Fund 80, as well as Fire and Emergency Services Reserves, Fund 07. There are a couple of things there just to make sure you're aware of. The Parks and Reserve, the Parks and Rec Fund Reserve is running at a deficit right now, primarily because two items. One is some of the projects that were funded are grant funded, and so we can't reimburse those until it's finished and submitted. So we're waiting on some of those funds to come in. That'd be Krista McCullough and Jill or Mike, you can remind me what other projects were a part of that.
The splash and spray playground.
Like getting park impact.
Yeah, the settlement funds have not been dispersed yet, so there was some.
Right. And that was the bigger part of that is that the settlement funds have not been dispersed. So we had made those decisions and approvals based on that being in there. And then on Fire and Emergency Services Reserves, the report that came in, I don't have it in front of me. We have about a balance of 540,000. There's some pieces to clear up in that just to make sure that that's all lined up. And so Chief Morantz has sent some documentation to Christina, and Christina's taking a look at that. So over the next couple months, we'll just line that all out. But it looks like at this point, the bottom line is we have around that mid 500s in our reserves. And so once all of the projects and expenditures are finished and lined out and we've cleared out that fund, we'll plan to come back to the board, not just with that final report, but to talk about where we go from there in using those funds and how best to look at that for the years to come for fire engine payments, maybe paying down an engine early, etc. So some good news coming out of that. We had a report on air quality management district electric vehicle charging station grant, which Director Scobie was actually instrumental in making that happen. Thank you so much, Monique, for that. And the idea is we're applying for a grant for a couple of electric charging stations, vehicle stations at the community center and at station 89. This is a grant that comes up, I think Jill, you said every 3 to 6 months. Is that about right?
And the state, provides additional funding every few months. So yeah.
Okay. So we're putting in the grant for it. We're not necessarily expecting to get it this time, but we'll come back around. And there's some details in that are going to be ironed out for what kind specifically we might want to have. But I'm excited to see that happening and come in alongside our solar project. That's another added benefit. And those were the major pieces that came from budget and admin. Director Carlson, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I had to find the cursor. No, I'm just curious. It shows that the Air Quality Management District grant was to be brought to the Board of Directors. Is that at a future date? It says at the bottom of the budget meeting agenda, items to take to the Board of Directors, AQMD grant application.
I think Director Scobie is going to do some further research before it elevates to the board.
Got it. All right. I look forward to learning about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Carlson. Yeah, that was that. Moni, correct me. I think that was specifically just looking at the type of charger that would be best for us to have. And
yeah.
Oh yeah, I've already sent several questions, and I'll be having a conversation tomorrow with ARC. And also Mike reached out to Brighton. He came back with some information too. So I'm just getting myself all educated and come back with some information for y'all.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
That's just wonderful. Okay, and that's it for the Budget and Admin Committee report. Any questions, directors? Okay, let's move on then. CC&Rs. So Director Scobie, that would be you.
Yeah, so we had about 3 kind of challenging items, and we had 2 of our CC&R committee members volunteer to meet with a homeowner, and I think one of them was unable to go. Needless to say, it was awesome that the committee members stepped up to actually, push this through and help our our community be successful in complying with and coming up with a solution. So one of them has been resolved. Another one has been brought into compliance. We still have one little sticky one on Archwood that we are still working with. And I always like it because Jim puts in there how many cases we have and how many, what he's been doing. And we kind of had a uptick in architectural review projects. So those are actually increasing, at least for this last period there were. And it's just amazing that how that ARC committee just looks at so many. Last month it was 36 approved through ARC, which is like one of the biggest numbers I've seen lately. So they're pretty busy. And I guess you heard about the door hangers. That's been going on for a while, where Jim's actually putting out door hangers, and he's actually been counting those. And when he's out in the community, and I see that as kind of an indicator of his maybe 1v1s, or also, just what he's keeping an eye on our community for. So he put out 8 of those, which I've been watching that. I think that's kind of interesting. We didn't have any items to bring forward to you at this point. And that was our meeting. Unless, Ellie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I thought
Looks like you got muted there, Director Wooden.
Ellie.
Want to unmute yourself? We can continue your comment. There you go. And mute it again. I think you're there.
Nope.
She might be double clicking instead of single clicking on the mute button.
There you go, Ellie. Don't touch anything.
No,
Ellie, you're here. Okay, good.
Okay, I thought I was going to give the report on it, but I guess not. But anyhow, the CC&R has the door hangers out and for use on inspection. And they're a tool that can be used for alternately in sending out a formal courtesy notice. They include information about CC&Rs and also information about ARC. And they also include an area to complete by the CC&R officer to give the homeowners some information on a violation or that may be existing on their property, as well as CC&R neighborhood that they are in. The CC&R office has had good response on the door hangs. Homeowners have been more than responsive to contact the CCNR office and try to work with them for compliance. The second thing, excuse me, is the Real Estate Association. We're trying to get them back to the seat Cameron Park Hall. They were there at one time and now they're not, but we need them because we've noticed that there's many new agents in the county and they're not aware of the CCNRs. And that's therefore not telling new homeowners that there are no restrictions or use on the properties here in Cameron Park. The CCNR office would like to find a way to bring the Real Estate Association back to the CSD at their hall for their meetings. And this would give the CCNR officer the opportunity to educate and to update the real estate firms and agents about the CCNRs and the new laws and changes in the community. Then the next thing would be the Welcome Wagon campaign.
Director,
With the help,
Director Wooten?
yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What I want to just simply ask you is, what we're going over is the agenda items from the last CCNR committee.
yes, I'm the head of the CCNRs.
No, actually, Director Scobie is the chair for the CCNR committee.
Okay, oh, I'm
And-
sorry.
and
Well,
so
just let me out.
No, that's okay.
When
But,
did that happen? No one even told me.
back at the beginning of the year when the committee reformed. It's listed there on the agenda. But I'm interrupting only to ask, because our meeting went longer with presentations, I just wanted to make sure we were staying on items that were on the.
Well, there's one more thing, so I might as well finish it, and it was the Welcome Wagon campaign.
Okay.
And the office would like to start preparing a welcome wagon packet for the new homeowners in Cameron Park. Packet would include the neighborhood CCNRs for that property and a parks map with amenities, the recreation department's biannual brochures and their schedules, a pamphlet on CCNRs and why they are required for each resident, and any other information that would benefit the new homeowners. Last but not least, Royal Park at this time, they continue to work with the EDC and the Sheriff's Department at the request of Mr. Turnbull. Thank you. That ends my.
Thank you, Director Wooten. Appreciate that.
Thank
Any
you.
questions from other member directors before we move on to next committee? Okay. Next committee to report is Fire and Emergency Services. This meeting was canceled, but this is an opportunity. If there's anything else to report, and particularly Chief Morantz, I was curious if you had a report on the training tower.
We actually met this week.
Oh. Okay, that was not included in the agenda there.
Parks and Rec met this week.
I'm sorry, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're on
Parks and
Fire and
Rec met.
Emergency Services at this point.
yeah.
Okay. Chief Morantz, you have a report for us?
I'm sorry, so there was cancellation of fire, yeah.
Yes, so the tower is progressing very well. I did a walkthrough yesterday with the contractor who has basically erected the building. I did that yesterday. And there's a couple little things that he has left to do. The county building inspector is going to come out there tomorrow morning and basically give an okay on the building itself. He can't give a final on the project completely because we still have to do all of the, the surface prep, the driveway, the asphalt, and the entrance, the additional entrance around the tower itself. So, but the building looks fantastic. The colors match the station really well. And when you're driving by 50, like I actually don't even notice it unless you really look over at it. And then the redwoods are growing really well in between Highway 50 and the tower itself. And so I think that's going really well. We are, and then I just want to let you know that the the 2 engines and utility, actually utility got rented today, but the 2 engines have been rented for the last few weeks. And that's probably gonna continue for a little while here. So, and we play, it's going back to the tower. I mean, we're definitely gonna have an open house and have you guys all out there and get to climb up there. And it is just such a well-made building. And there's hooks for hanging off the side, which I know we have a couple of you who want to do that. And the burn room and it is just, it is like, yeah, it's really, really, really nice. So thank you for your support on that. And any questions, just let me know.
Okay, I'm wondering if there's a fundraising opportunity and like a director's race to the top.
I'll pay you to race to the top, Eric.
With a hose pack on your back, and breathing apparatus.
Bring it.
All right.
Bring your own hose.
I'm thinking hanging over the edges and we could throw water balloons.
Yes, yes. Don't tank and everything.
I'm gonna start practicing pull-ups.
Thank you for that, Chief Morantz. We're excited about this. We're glad to keep doing those updates. All right. Anything else to report since there wasn't a meeting? It sounded like that was it.
I know that the solar project is going to start next week, and so we'll coordinate with them because we do have the last contractor coming in to do that surface prep. There's a trench that needs to be dug, but I think everything's working really well. We're really, communicating well, and we've had a little bit of COVID issues at our station. We did have someone come down positive, and we've had some quarantine, but we're maintaining the staffing levels that we need to have. And I've actually brought a couple paramedics over from the Buena Vista Casino, which I know oversee, and so they're actually staffing one of the engines right now at Cameron Park. That was my intention, was to get a bigger pool of paramedics. As we know, all the districts are struggling with actually staffing our engines with paramedics, statewide really. So, so we're doing good there. Yeah, I think that's it.
Very much. Anything else to report from Fire and Emergency Services Chair? So that'd be Director Bazette. Anything else to report?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I mixed the two up. Yeah, no, we had no meeting this month, so nothing that I know.
Okay, and then finally we have Parks, well, almost finally, Parks and Rec Committee. Director Carlson.
That's right, best for last. We had no items that required a vote or to be moved forward to the general board. It was Director Bazette and I that met on Monday along with staff. We did discuss a need for reliable shade at the pool. So hence the pop-ups. We discussed that there are lots of people, which is just wonderful to see. Lots of people at the pool these days, at the community center and at the Cameron Park Lake. The latter largely due to pickleball and frisbee golf. And we were excited to learn from Jill that there is an existing ordinance that prohibits smoking in our parks. And that is great that we already have that ordinance. And I understand that there's signs will be put up if they're not already. And I'm actually wondering if I don't know if the fire grant can be used for the no smoking signs. I mean, I'm sure no smoking signs don't cost a ton because they don't need to be custom. But I just wonder if some of the signs that we're getting could from the grant could be including a message about no smoking, especially if the signs we know are definitely going to be placed in our parks. But it had been a concern that potentially there were some members of the public who were smoking in parks, and we certainly don't want that to happen and cause an issue. So that was good news to hear. We have an existing ordinance about that. So it was a great meeting. It was really good to hear from Mike and Kim about and really have a good discussion about what priorities should be for parks and recreation as things are changing. And I was just glad to be part of that discussion. So nothing else to report. I don't know if Director Bazat or Mike or Jill, I don't see Kim here tonight, have anything else you want to add?
Well, the priorities thing was an important conversation because of a couple of things. One was the water feature is significantly higher than we expected. So that one is, so it was making us, it's still going to happen, but that was a cost factor that's going to come, maybe going to be reviewed. And then the other part was the Ponderosa Little League is not willing to contribute to the renovation of Krista McAuliffe, I think. So we really were talking about our fields and how we might approach them, and do we want to have one field that is maintained at a high level that the travel balls and the rec leagues could use pretty much year round. So it wasn't specific to Ponderosa Little League. But I think it was an interesting conversation looking at what were our priorities and a very thoughtful conversation with really good inputs from both rec and the parks people. So anyway, the shade structure did stand out as something that with that high participation at the pool, we really need to do something. So that's going to probably be coming forward in the future. And bathroom renovations maybe were slightly lower priority. So we just kind of looked at all things and asked a lot of questions and a good, very thoughtful conversation. So it was a good meeting.
Good. Thank you very much for that report. Finally, we have the General Manager Recruitment Ad Hoc Committee report. We have some pieces to report tonight, others that will come later. The simple summary is, as we've moved forward in this process, as we reported last month, the listing had gone out and into a number of different websites, a number of different professional organizations. It is worth noting that the position is still active in all those places, and that was on purpose to allow the window of opportunity for some people to still be open. As MRG has advised us, and I think both Director Carlson and I have seen this, the job market right now is just very different from anything we've experienced in a long time for how people apply, don't apply, respond, react, move to jobs or not. So we thought it wise to keep that open. But with that being open, we have moved forward in the process. Out of 28 applicants, there are 5 that rose to the top. And so the ad hoc committee has established an initial interview process with a panel to vet those 5. This is the initial one. That will happen next week. The panel will consist of both Director Carlson and myself as the ad hoc committee, a member from MRG, and then a couple of GMs from this region who volunteer their service to sit there with us and bring professional lens to the interviews. So the interviews will take place next Wednesday. We have one interviewee that has to Zoom in from a distance, so we'll do that on Tuesday. And the aim coming from that will be that the committee and the panel will raise up probably 2 or 3 the top candidates from that will then be brought forward to the board. And we're still structuring that interview process, and we'll come back to you for input on that. But we're moving along. And so that means that by sometime next week, we will hopefully have a couple, 3 prime candidates that the board will consider further in depth. And that's the basic report from the ad hoc committee. Director Carlson, did you want to add something to that at this point?
I don't have anything to add to that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the directors for the ad hoc committee? Okay. All right. So with that, we will move to general matters to and from board members and staff. Let's go ahead and start. General Manager, just a quick word on those upcoming trainings, if you would, and then I'll go to directors.
Yeah, so we have heard from some of you about the upcoming trainings this fall, actually in September, one in the beginning of September, one in the end of September, from CSDA. We can apply for scholarships. In the past, we've worked with each individual board member as far as travel costs and things like that. So I really wanted to reach out to, Director Bazette and Director Aston. I know Eric has got a school schedule that he competes a lot of times with in person, but Director Bazette, did you receive the email about the conferences? I know you were on vacation.
I must not have read it. No.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll send it to you again, and we'll see if you're interested. Director Scobie is interested. She's gone before. We have a limited budget, so we're going to try to make it go as far as we can. Director
Sure.
Carlson is also interested in going. So take a look at that, and we'll see what we can piece together. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. I'm interested.
Okay, and Abby, if you can make note to resend that to Director Bazette tomorrow, that'd be great.
And I'll just respond to you, General Manager. Yes, I have received that, and I am looking at what I can do with my with my teaching schedule.
Oh, nice.
Well, unfortunately, they don't tend to do these over weekends or end of the week, which is
I know
when I'm available. So coming out of COVID and with a new principal, I have to be careful when I'm gone.
Yeah.
But anyway,
There
I'm
is a
looking
check.
at one of those two things to potentially go to. So thank you for that.
Okay. That'd be
All right.
awesome. Good.
All right, so let's do a report in from directors. Director Scobie.
Well, I had a opportunity to go to the legislative reception with Jill at the country club, where I got to meet our supervisor Turnbull. I got to meet Tom McClintock, and I got to meet another state assemblyman, Frank. He also has an interesting name. Forgot his last name. And some other folks, and that was interesting. I had to leave early, but I enjoyed that. So getting to know kind of a larger, I did, and another supervisor too was there. And yeah, several of them, now that I think about it. So that was good. That was good. Kind of opening up my training there. I've also been taking, I originally signed up with a class at the CSD for Spanish, and we have been meeting over Zoom via the pandemic, and they are expressing interest in returning the class to the CSD. So I've been telling them, well, it's not until after the solar project. So they were asking like, well, should we be putting out information about it now? And I really didn't have an answer for that, but it's exciting to know that there are people in the community that are looking forward to coming back and using the facility.
Yeah.
And I did get to sub on the budget and admin. Thank you, Felicity, for the opportunity. So it was kind of nice to be back in the back on that committee just once, only once. That's no one else is allowed to take another break. But I did get the opportunity to see the EV grant. So as I said earlier, I'll be chatting up and getting some more information. I also expressed some interest in going to the Rotary with our general manager to kind of spread the word about our strategic plan. I believe that's our goal there. So that's what I have.
Director Scobie, appreciate that. Director Wooten.
I have nothing to say. I thought I was the head of CCNRs, but I guess it's been flipped over.
All right. Director Carlson, anything to report?
Yeah, I just want to give my thoughts on returning from virtual meetings to in-person meetings. I know that the current plan per the general manager's written report is, and verbally, is to have us return to in-person meetings in August or September. And while I absolutely look forward to that, I also feel very strongly that we should continue to offer a virtual option. I realize talking with Jill, I realize there's a bit of logistics involved in that for compliance and just plain audio visual as well and staffing. But I think there are people in our community who are maybe they've had both shots, both vaccines, but due to an underlying health condition, they're still very vulnerable. I think we've got this COVID variant that's flying around, and even without the issue of COVID, it's unfortunate. I really wish we'd had more members of the community attend over this past year, the virtual situation. But even without concerns about COVID, I think having a virtual option for members of the community really can open it up for people who maybe you're not able to drive, maybe it's really difficult to move around for mobility reasons, for families who are busy cooking dinner, et cetera. I just want to keep the conversation open and hopefully come back to it again about the district continuing to have a virtual option, even when we are able to meet in person. So I wanted to bring that up, and I hope that we will talk about it again.
Thank you, Director Carlson. All right, Director Bazette.
I've been on a lengthy road trip and visited places like Sun Valley, where the Billionaires Club was meeting, and Ketchum, Idaho, and Pendleton. I've had amazing sushi in places that I didn't expect. My own hometown of Grants Pass, met with some friends who had been elected officials. So I've seen a lot of our West, and it's nice to be back in our community. But it's just interesting seeing how different communities are doing what they're doing and struggling and believing that their COVID is totally a hoax, and there's little that needs to be done. And on the other hand, people that are still very fearful, and just seeing that the variety of communities across our West here. But I'm glad to be back in Cameron Park. But so I've felt like I've been out of the loop a bit here.
It's good to have you back, Director Bazette. And my simple report, just enjoying the pieces of our community that we help oversee. Just dropped a couple boys off to play some disc golf today. Paid at the kiosk with a wonderful young lady who was there and friendly to meet us. Buying some snacks at that reinvigorated snack shack there. Loving coming into town and seeing Krista McCullough in such good shape. That's just a wonderful presentation as people are coming into town. And like some of you have mentioned, seeing people in our parks and utilizing our facilities, it's wonderful. Personal report, last time I mentioned the basketball that's happening in our gym, and that group has also been doing other travel tournaments. We just came back from Las Vegas, of all places. Think it's hot here, go to Vegas. But the freshman team in that AAU group took first place at the tournament in Vegas, and this is considered a national tournament. There's not many people from Massachusetts or New York there, but there are teams from all over the West, everywhere from New Mexico, Arizona, up to Alaska even. So our freshman team took first place. Our varsity team lost in the championship game after going undefeated just by a little bit, but overall our group did really well. So Cameron Park is supporting a really good program there. So thank you all for your work with that. And that's all I have to report. Anything else from staff? I'll just throw that as a general piece. Any members of staff that have something to chime in on at this point before we move on?
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
nothing for me. No.
Great. Okay, seeing none, last piece is our solar project update. Jill, you gave us some of that. Is there anything else to report there?
It's all in my email. So if you guys just check your email, I think it's pretty detailed out there. And construction is going to start. It's going to start on Thursday, tomorrow. A little bit of a partial parking lot closure. It'll be open back up Friday, Saturday, closed down again on Sunday, and it will be pretty much closed for the next few weeks.
Okay. So with that, that brings an end to our board information items. We'll now be moving to getting ready to move into the convene a closed session for our piece. We have two agendas here. So the first item of business, and Jason, you can chime in and correct me if I'm moving all improperly here. The first piece will be to make sure that we approve the agenda for our special meeting. We've already done call to order and roll call pledge of allegiance in concurrence with our regular session. The last piece becomes the adoption of the agenda. And so the adoption of the agenda for the special meeting, if I have any questions or motions from my fellow directors.
I was just going to say that's correct. If someone has a motion regarding adopting the agenda for the special meeting.
I move that we adopt the agenda for the special closed session meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call, General Manager.
Director Easton,
Aye.
Director Carlson,
Aye.
Director Bazette,
Aye.
Director Scobie,
Aye.
Director Wooten.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for that. Jason, if you would help me make sure I'm doing this properly here, because we have adopted this agenda separately, or at least this piece of it, there's the open forum and public comment in this. Do we want to observe that as well, or is that observed concurrently with the other agenda?
I would observe it separately right now, please.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. So with this agenda, we will have a moment for open forum for non-agenda items where members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda that falls within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors. So we'll open that forum right now. And Barbara, if you have any comments you want to make right here, this is the time to do it. Okay, seeing no hand, we'll close open forum. We move then to public comment, and we will read this. I believe, Jason, we can do this concurrently for both the regular agenda and the special meeting agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so public comment at this time. Members of the public may speak on any closed session agenda item. Closed sessions may be called as necessary for personal litigation on labor relations or to meet the negotiator prior to the purchase, sale, exchange, or lease of real property. Members of the public may address the board prior to closing the meeting. So at this point, we'll open up for public comment on closed session items on the agenda. Okay, seeing no hand, we'll close public comment. And at this point, we will convene to close session. So Abby, if you would pause the recording, we're going to need to come back and report out of closed session. So please pause that. Don't stop the recording if you would. Okay.
The report out of closed session regarding the regular board meeting agenda was that the board discussed in closed session conference with legal counsel existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, specifically Cameron Park CSD versus Prowess PCM Inc., Eldorado Superior Court case number PC 2018-0258. And regarding that matter, direction was given to attorney and staff. The report out of closed session regarding the board's special meeting regards public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, general manager recruitment. That matter was discussed as agendized and direction was given to staff. The board adjourned from closed session regarding both matters at 10:22 p.m. And that's all, Director Easton.
Thank you, Council. And that, with that, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.